we're gonna paint these really cute falling leaves. I'm gonna show you how to do that using the underpainting technique. I'm also gonna give you this awesome free handout that has your image outline just for this particular project. It's gonna be great, so let's get started. These are some of the tools that I'll be using today. So I have my paints, water, scissors, a pencil, or a stylus, because I'm going to be using that with my carbon copy paper. The first thing that you're going to do after you grab all your supplies is you're going to get your PDF that you've already printed out, and you're going to cut out that outline. So we're cutting it out so that it's just easier to trace. You do not have to cut it out, but you definitely can. So let's go ahead and do that. I also have all these awesome links on here of my favorite supplies. If you're interested in seeing the exact carbon copy paper or any of the things that you see here. And then just keep your directions handy so you can see that. Once you have your image outlined and you've taped down your paper, you're going to take that carbon copy paper, place it shiny side down on your watercolor paper, place your image outline gently on top. And I like to tape it so that it doesn't move, and really tape it gently. Otherwise, you're gonna leave little fingerprints. And all you're gonna do, take a pencil, or you can use a stylus like this. They usually come in packs with the carbon copy paper, but either is fine. And I sometimes will use a pencil just so I can see my lines, and gently trace the outline. You can always check and see how you're doing here. All right, great. Once we've traced the entire thing, we're going to remove both the outline and the carbon copy paper. I have this here so you can see it. Now that I have my image outline, the first thing that I'm going to do is take a look at your handout. The first thing that it says is step 1, tonal underpainting. Now, before we jump right in, I want to show you what an underpainting actually looks like. So on your handout, there are 2 images. The bottom image is the one that's totally done. The top image are the different underpaintings. So just really quick and short, an underpainting is basically a first painting underneath your final layer. So when you're painting with watercolor or really any medium, it's the initial layer of paint that kind of sets the tone for the way that it's going to look when you're all done. So it's going to change the way that the painting looks. So if you painted a layer of bright pink underneath your painting, it's going to make it look really bright and really warm. So it's the same thing with any other color. So the first type of underpainting that we're going to do is a tonal underpainting, which is just grays. So you can see in these top 2 leaves, we are going to do the kind of top to bottom with tonal underpainting. Then we're going to use a complementary color underpainting, analogous underpainting, and then finally a brown underpainting, just so you can see the difference between using a tonal underpainting and brown, because it just really warms it up. So for our tonal underpainting, that's our first 2 little leaves. That's either going to be Paynes gray or black. I'm going to use Paynes gray because I like how cool that is. So those top 2 leaves, just like we see here, are going to be our tonal underpainting. So I'm going to paint directly with that because you want the paint to be thin. You don't want it to be really wet and kind of all over the place, because we're painting in a small section. And I'm just going to paint any of the shadows that I will paint later on. So I'm going to focus mainly on that to start. So like the ends of these right here, and the stem of that leaf. And then I'm just going to blend it out with my clean damp brush here. Okay, so that is my first layer. I'm just using Paynes gray, and I'm going to just intensify some of these shadows there. That first layer, that underpainting, is done with that leaf. I'm going to do this second little leaf here. Now that we're done with that, that is our first underpainting. That is a tonal underpainting where we're using our gray and black. Now we're going to move on to step 2, which is our complementary color underpainting. Your complementary colors need to be the opposite on the color wheel. So if my my leaf later on is going to be orange, then my underpainting will be blue. So same deal, I'm painting directly and I'm thinking about where the shadows are. So leaves, anywhere where they bend will have a nice deep shadow. So the inside of that leaf is going to be darker than the edges. It'll get darker again at the edges, but the middle of that leaf where it's bent really needs to be the darkest. So I might intensify that just a little bit. And I'm gonna lighten this area up. Some of those areas light, but you know, if you look at a real leaf, the edges are gonna be a little bit darker. So I'm just gonna grab a little bit more blue. Maybe this leaf is really kind of wilting or getting dried up. You can always go back just like you would regularly paint with glazing to intensify any shadows. Okay, we're doing a great job here. We have our first step 1, which is our tonal underpainting. We have step 2, which is our complementary color underpainting. And I use blue because my leaf later will be orange. And now I'm going to use analogous colors. So these step 2 and step 3 are really based on the color you want it to become. So if I want my leaf to become orange, my complementary will be blue. And if I want my leaf later to be red, then, or I mean orange again, then the analogous color will be red. So I'm going to use red for my next leaf, just like I did here in the example. And I'm going to use alizarin crimson because it's really nice and cool, and that'll look nice with my warm orange. So again, I'm going to think about where the shadows are, and I'm painting directly. Okay, just like we did before, we're making sure that the inside of that leaf is dark because that's where the bend is. So when you see the bend and it kind of cups like this, you're not going to see as much of the light's just not going to reach there. So it should look darker, generally speaking. Now we're going to do a shadow on the right side, maybe some of the edges of these leaves. And then I'm just going to use my little outline method where I outline it and then just blend it with a damp brush. So it has a soft edge. If you want to learn more about my outline method, I have another video that you can take a look at that kind of is a slower version and kind of breaks down why I might choose that method over wet to wet or direct painting. Okay, great. We have 1, 2, 3 underpaintings and we're almost done. We're going to do our last one, which is brown. And I'm going to start out with just some burnt umber. Okay, so I'm painting just like I did before, directly. And when you're done with this, you don't have to have just these 4 leaves, but I really wanted to break it down to show you exactly how you can use an underpainting with watercolor and just a few different ways. Especially it worked really well with these falling leaves because typically in fall, there's all these different colors. And so it's really nice to have a range and it fits, doing different underpaintings really fits that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add our final layer, each one of those actual colors of the leaves on top of our underpaintings. So we're going to go back up to our first set of leaves and we're going to use the colors that we want it to look like. So I chose some greens and yellows and I'm going to paint directly on that. Now the key here is making sure that you use just a tiny bit of water. If it's really drippy, it's the glazing method. So you're going to, if you have too much wet paint, you're going to have a lot of cauliflowering. So I'm painting directly on top of that and I'm moving fairly quickly and I'm not overworking an area because that'll lift up the paint underneath. Now you can immediately see that after I did that, you can the shadows are maintained, looks dark in the areas where I painted it dark, and now it just has a green tint to it. And I'm going to add just a little bit more wherever I think I need it. Okay, so you're going to do the same thing with this next leaf. And if you want, you can mix up a different green. I might do a little yellow or raw sienna here, just so you can see. So a little sap green, a little raw sienna, just so it looks like maybe the leaves are changing. It's not as bright and brilliant. That was my other thinking here, is that it goes from, you know, you can kind of see how it would change throughout the season. Now that we have these two leaves, we're going to move on to our third leaf, which was our complementary color underpainting. So we're going to use orange on top of that blue, and you're going to see it totally transform. Doesn't mean that you can't use other colors kind of connected to orange. So some of the colors that I might use in addition to cadmium orange would be a little bit of raw sienna, a little bit of maybe kind of like a brick red or Indian red. And I'm painting just the same way that I did before. So really light glazing, not too much water. A rule of thumb I would say when you're glazing is, do you see how I'm not going to go from here and then there and then back to the center? You kind of want to pull that paint and stick with it so you don't have any sharp lines. Because when you glaze, when you do the glazing method, you're using such a small amount of paint that it dries very fast. And if you wanted to, I'm adding a little bit of alizarin crimson just to deepen up that shadow. You definitely don't have to do this. But I might add a little bit more orange, because if your first layer is so thin you barely can see the change in color, then add another layer. Just wait for that first layer to dry, and then you can paint your next layer. Okay, look at this. I'm loving it. It looks great. We have our 3 leaves. Now we're going to move on to our next leaf. Our next leaf is that big main leaf. We're going to add orange to it because we were using analogous colors. So I'm going to grab some more of that cadmium orange and I'm going to paint directly. You can see in my original example that I have lots of other details, and we'll get to that. You can add all those details after you do your first layer of glazing. And you can see, look at how bright that is. It looks amazing. So when you choose to do an underpainting, it's usually to create richness, or, you know, just test out your skills a little bit, you know, practice a different method instead of just painting directly or intuitively. I think it's helpful to just kind of practice some of these skills. Great. I'm going to let that dry before I do some of those other details. I can add a little bit of, you know, a deeper shadow on the edges, but I'm not going to play too much with this, especially in the middle, because if I add it while it's wet, it's going to cauliflower and it's not going to look good. Our final leaf was our brown underpainting. You can choose what color you want to add on top. So I think I originally added orange. You could do a green one just to see how it changes it, and just for fun, let's do that. I'll start out with a green layer so you can see. And I can even do, you know, I could go green and then I could go back and add orange. So that totally changed the leaf. And I think I'm going to let it dry and add a little bit of orange because I really liked how warm that looked. So that is your lesson on underpainting. If you haven't already, go to the link that's in the captions and make sure that you grab the handout because it has all the information that we covered today. Also has that awesome outline. I hope you had a ton of fun, and definitely comment below if you want to see more videos just like this, and stick around for more good stuff. I will see you next time. Bye everybody. Hi, I know that the video's done and you don't have to stick around, but I'm going to finish this little painting here. So if you want to see how I might finish this with a background, feel free to keep watching. But yeah, but the video is done, guys. Come on. Come on, come on. Look at how pretty this is. I'm using a little bit of Indian red because I thought that might be a nice warm color, and I didn't really use that much of it, but I always go really fast in the main video, but there's, you know, painting takes time. So if you are like me and you like to take your time with something, you can always add more. There we go. That looks so nice. Now that looks like a really finished card. Almost done. There we go. I'm just painting around all those little bits. That's so pretty. Nice. Okay, now we're done. The video is officially over, but definitely subscribe. I hope you come back and see more of these awesome video tutorials. I'll see you next time. Bye.